Okay, um, welcome all of you to our next session uh, in heat transfer in bioreactors. This topic is in continuation with the previous topic of mass transfer in bioreactors. So, the basic concepts of heat and mass transfer and its coefficients were discussed in the previous sessions. Here we will see how the heat transfer principles were applied, or what is the relevance of these heat transfer principles in the design of bioreactors. Now let's start the presentation. Here, in the case of a heat transfer, especially in fermenter design, efficient heat transfer is important in controlling the temperature during sterilization operations and maintaining the required operating temperature throughout the fermentation run. So there are two stages where we are conducting the sterilization operations for the media and the entire bioreactor. So that's one part where heat is required. And the second one is the overall fermentation process in which the self-generated heat or heat requirement or heat generation by the fermentation, the fermenting organism in the medium, that needs to be addressed. So basically, in a fermenter design, we have to take these two things into consideration. One is the sterilization aspects of the heat, and the second one is the heat generated or the process heat that is generated and the overall operating temperature of the fermentation. So in both these cases, we need to consider the heat transfer concepts. The heat generated in the fermentation is primarily due to the metabolic activity of the microorganisms and also due to the mechanical agitation of the process. For example, if it is a continuously stirred reactor where vigorous shaking or vigorous mixing is done, then automatically that accumulates heat. So the heating, overall heat generated in the bioreactor is basically most of the components of the heat generation is from the metabolic activity of the self-generated heat of the organisms, and the second part is the heat generated by the mechanical mixing and agitation process that is done during the fermentation process. Okay, heat. Okay, for most fermentations, this heat needs to be dissipated or reduced by different cooling mechanisms, like different cooling systems. For fermentations that operate above the ambient temperature, such as those involving the thermophilic organisms, which usually, as you know, it may operate at 45 degrees Celsius or 50 degrees Celsius, which is well above the room temperature, there you require input of a heat. Means you need to supply external heat or transfer external heat to maintain that reaction at the required temperature that is preferable for the thermophilic organism. So in that case, heat input is required. Usually, self-generated heat of that fermentation medium needs to be dissipated or to be cooled down in the normal procedures, whereas in the case of thermophilic operations, we require additional input of the heat. Now, in agitated bioreactors, heat transfer may be affected by one of the following three configurations, or it may be controlled by one of the three following configurations. One is a jacket surrounding the surface of the vessel. So that is an external jacket surrounding the entire fermenter vessel, so that this externally supplied cooling jacket will cool down the temperature rise or the medium, the temperature rise in the medium or the fermentation broth. And the second one is internal surfaces such as coils or vertical baffles, etc., which is actually present within the system. For example, in the case of a CSTR or a continuously stirred tank reactor, which is actually commercially available, there will be internal coiled pipes which will carry maybe cold water, and that cooling system which is actually present within the reactor will support the control of the temperature. So that they are part of the internal surfaces that is provided within the vessel or within the medium of the fermentation. And the next one is a circulation through an external heat exchanger. In some other cases where we have a very, say, significant heat reduction is required. Some process like, say, SCP production or something, where a large amount of heat is required that cannot be normally controlled by such internal surfaces or cooling coils, etc. Then you need, require to recruit some external heat exchangers where the medium or the hot medium is to be transferred to an external heat exchanger, and after controlling that or after bringing down the temperature, it needs to be recirculated back into the bioreactor. So there are three different concepts. One is a jacket, that is an external jacket surrounding the fermenter vessel. And the second one is internal surfaces that is provided by coils or some vertical baffles which is present within the container and that is present within the medium, so that there will be direct contact with the medium and the cooling pipes. And the next one is a heat exchanger where the medium will be transported out of that vessel and and during the process itself, and that will be cooled using that external heat exchanger, and it will be circulated back into the system. Uh, is it clear? Am I audible? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the heat transfer is primarily achieved using an outer jacket surrounding the internal phase or via internal coils. Usually we have the primary two options, that is the outer jacket or the jacket system or an internal phase with the internal coils. Two systems are the major forms of the heat transfer systems in bioreactors. Uh, of course, there are some rare cases where external heat exchangers were used, but primarily both these types are widely used. No direct contact exists between the cooling or heating system and the fermentation medium. You know that it invites contamination because the externally provided jacket or cooling jacket of the fermenter vessel, in that case, you know that there is no direct contact with the cooling, say, cold water which is present in the jacket outside and the medium that is present in the inside is not in direct contact, so that it eliminates all the possibilities of contamination. And even the cooling pipes that is present, for say in case of a CSTR, where the coiled pipes or the cooling pipes are present within or provided within the fermentation vessel, there also it is only through flowing through that sterile pipes, and there is no direct contact with the fermentation medium, so that the possibilities of contamination needs to be addressed at that point, and that will be minimized if there is no contact. So the heat is conducted through the vessel walls, coils, and baffles. So conductive process or convective process of heat transfer, both will occur there. But anyway, in this case, we have the conduction through the conduction of heat through the vessel walls or metallic walls of the vessels or cooling pipes through which the heat is dissipated. So there is a conductive transfer through that pipes. This system also used it to sterilize the vessels and contain and the contents like medium which is present before inoculation. So as you know, in the previous slide we explained that the uh, heat exchange, that is all the heat exchange concepts needs to be addressed while sterilization and also during the fermentation process. In the usually you know that larger vessels or larger bioreactors were sterilized using hot steam, and that steam, pressurized steam, is injected into the reactor, and even for sterilization of the entire tubings and other things, and even for sterilization of the medium, that medium can be filled into the vessel, and then external heat can be supplied to the overall vessel, and the heat or it can be heated, that medium can be heated within the vessel itself, so that efficient heat transfer, if it is occurring in that medium, then that will sterilize the medium. So usually the larger vessels or maybe gallons of size vessels were not filled with pre-sterilized medium externally, or externally pre-sterilized medium is not transferred into the vessel. You can fill in the vessel initially, and or before filling the vessel with the medium, you can sterilize the entire content with the steam, and or entire tubings and vessels can be sterilized with the pressurized steam. And again, after filling the medium, the entire vessel can be heated within the vessel itself, so that after sterilization, transport of the medium into the vessel can be avoided, which also invites contamination. So larger vessels, or in case of larger gallons of size fermenter or bioreactors, were actually pre-filled with unsterilized medium, and it is sterilized on site. So that's what it is done. Well, that is how it is done. So anyway, these systems, like sterilization systems for vessels, their pipes or tubes, and even medium, can be applied on site of the reactor using such a sterilization or heat transfer systems. Now, atmospheric pressure control during the fermentation is accomplished by injecting either cold or hot water into the outer jacket or the internal coils. So actually, you cannot inject the say hot water into the medium so that it will dilute and get diluted, and it will destroy the medium. So you can directly inject this cooling system into the medium, but it will circulate through the pipes, or internal or external jackets or internal pipes, and the heat transfer is occurring through the walls of the pipes or the vessel walls of the jacket to the medium. So the sufficient heating is done, and it will be sterilizing the medium. So there is keep it in mind that there is no direct contact with the cooling system and the medium that is present within the vessel. And even during the process of sterilization, and also during the process of fermentation, there is no direct contact allowed, so that contamination possibilities can be minimized. So it is not through direct contact, but through conductive process of heat transfer through the jacket walls and the internal and the walls of the internal pipes that heat is actually transferred. And in some circumstances, alternative cooling media may be used. Instead of water-cooled systems, we can also use, say, glycol, which may ensure a better heat transfer efficiency. So additional heat transfer cooling systems can also be used. Now, in the case of the jacket systems or external jacket systems, the external jackets come in a variety of forms, including a simple unsupported jacket with and a half pipe or half pipe coil jacket, which is also known as a limpet jacket. So there are basically two types of systems consisting of half pipe wound around the exterior of the jacket. I will show you a picture later. But the simplest form of the jacket is that say in this picture you can see that there is an impeller which is shown at the center, which ensures mixing, and this is the internal tank which holds the medium, and the fermentation is done within the medium. And there is an external jacket, and through this in between the internal wall and the external jacket wall, there is a space which is actually occupied or which filled with the cooling system or the coolant, maybe water or glycol or whatever coolant that you are providing, that will be filled within the external space of the jacket. And heat transfer occurs through the walls of the vessel, and that ensures a proper cooling of the proper cooling of the entire mixture or the fermentation broth. The half-pipe jackets, while more expensive to synthesize, they enhance the local service side heat. So better heat transfer efficiency can be achieved by half-pipe or limpet jackets. I will show you a picture later. And the lower picture, that this is actually a limpet jacket or a half-pipe jacket, in which additional pipes were wound around the external jacket instead of providing such a, say, a space filled with fluid all around. It provides a tubing system or a pipe system, half pipe system, which is wound around the internal vessel. So I can show you another picture in the next slide. So half pipe jackets are more expensive compared to the normal external jackets. They also have better surface area for the heat transfer and maintain turbulent flow in the service side. So both of which lead to better overall heat transfer. So the half pipe jackets were considered as a little bit more expensive and more efficient method of cooling or a cooling system or a heat exchanger compared to the normal external jacket. So in this case, these are two pictures of the half pipe or limpet jackets. Here, instead of the internal providing an external jacket or a space between the two walls, which is filled with fluid or the coolant, it provides say a pipe system that is wound around the uh, actual fermentation tank. So this is how it is done. So now you can see that here this is the fermenter or inner vessel of the fermenter, and here on the walls of the fermenter there are say half circles were represented here. You can see that. So this type of pipes were actually the pipes that is wound around or designed like that. So water or the coolant will flow through these pipes. So this is a cross section that is represented over the wall of the container or the fermenter vessel. So the coolant will flow through the pipes or the half pipes that is wound around. So one face of that pipe is a flat one, and the other one will be hemicircle. Okay. So are you getting the point? Hello?
Yes, sir.
So these are the pipes that is wound around the internal container. So this is the fermenter vessel, and over which the pipes were, or half pipes means it's only hemicircle, and the side that is facing the vessel wall is a flat one because it's actually welded to that container, and only a hemicircle pipe is actually represented over here. It is not a complete pipe. It is not cylindrical. Okay. So the side that is facing the vessel wall is flat, and a cross section can be represented like this. So this design ensures a better heat transfer through that flat surface which is continuously in contact with the vessel wall. And also, since you are providing a pipe system, turbulent flow of the fluid can be ensured. Instead of just filling the coolant over the jacket or within the space of the jacket and keeping it static for some time, a turbulent for more turbulent or forceful flow of say the coolant system can be passed through these pipes so that say a better heat transfer efficiency can be achieved. So the flow rate of the coolant can be well regulated using this system, and that ensures the uh, heat transfer efficiency of that limber jacket. So, but design of this system is a little bit more expensive compared to the other ones. However, they are unsuitable for fermentation for the following reasons. But still, there are some drawbacks. It is having some advantages over the other one, but still, there are some drawbacks. As with the jacket systems, these systems are prone to fouling due to microbial growth. Fouling means settling of dirt or some other items over the walls. Okay, if there is some contaminants or some other organisms who are growing and sticking onto the walls and creating a film over that, then that's a process of fouling. So usually in all the cases of fermenters or other reactors or any vessel that actually contains a broth with a nutrient-rich broth, then you can expect microorganisms sticking onto the walls and even to the exteriors if it is not properly kept clean and sterilized periodically. So that type of tubings which is wound around that jacket and or that vessel, and the coolant is actually passing through that one, and there is the external surface of or some nooks and crannies will be there where the possible microbes will settle down and it starts growing. And that type of fouling or microbial or growth and other sediments or other settling of the dirt particles, etc., can be expected over such surfaces. So that's one of the limitations. Now, coils are inherently difficult to clean. If it is a simple tank or vessel, then you can easily clean that one. So as you know that if such a complicated coil system is provided, then cleaning and that all the microbes and other settled particles within that system or the fouling component that is produced, it is difficult to clean such systems with the more complex pipes or tubes. During the sterilization, local hotspots may occur and causing deleterious effects in the fermentation media. So the concept is, say, if you have a uniform heat distribution, like say here, if you are filling the entire external jacket with cold water, and the transfer will occur uniformly through these walls. But if you are providing such pipes, and there will be localized regions, or the region that is directly in contact with the pipe will have a better heat transfer, whereas the area where, in the areas where there is no pipe, say this area, in that area the heat transfer efficiency will not be there. So the medium that is actually coming in contact, the inside of the medium that is coming in contact at that region will have a less heat transfer, and the medium actually more medium that is coming in into more close proximity of the pipe or the tube, that will have a better heat transfer efficiency. So that means there will be localized hotspot of better heat transfer and insufficient heat transfer, which may result in deleterious effect of the media, where at some portion of the medium or the vessel, there will be higher temperature in the medium, and those medium that is coming in contact with the cooling pipe, that will have a better heat transfer efficiency, and the medium will be safe. So it may cause localized hotspots of temperature, and at that point maybe the medium components may be destroyed due to our heating process if it is not properly controlled. So that there are some technical reasons which makes it unfavorable for a proper fermenter use. But anyway, it is not that it is not at all it is not an advice against the use of limber jacket, but it is having its own efficiency, and also there are some disadvantages. Okay, advantages and both disadvantages both needs to be addressed while discussing such types of a jacket. Anyway, when we are comparing the two jacket systems, compared to the simple jacket, but heat transfer efficiency, in terms of heat transfer efficiency, limber jacket is the better one. But it is more costly, the design is complicated, there are more fouling possibilities are there, sterilization will be more difficult, and even the localized hotspots of heat may be generated if it is not properly maintained. But still, it is a model which offers better heat transfer efficiency, and there are a lot of bioreactors which is designed based on this model. Okay, is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So the next one is external heat exchanger. The external heat exchangers, while are highly efficient and extremely useful, they are not suitable for the fermentation process simply because the cycling fermentation growth through an external heat exchanger is an extreme contamination risk. So usually, if it is not advisable if it is that much required. Otherwise, for as I mentioned, normal bioreactor systems were designed with the previous two items, like jacket systems and internal pipes. The external heat exchangers were normally not advised because you need to take out the medium during the fermentation process itself to an external heat exchanger, and in which you will cool down the medium and circulate it back. So as you know, in this picture, this is a fermenter tank, and using a recycling pump or peristaltic pump, you will take out the medium, and this needs to be taken out through these pipes and peristaltic pumps and passed into the heat exchanger, and then again you have to feed it back into the cool and the cold broth needs to be supplied back into the reactor for continuing the fermentation. So this design actually it poses a lot of contamination risk, because we have to take the medium out and transport across the transport to another location for exchanging the heat in the external heat exchanger. The sterile pumping of large volumes of fluids is inherently difficult. Pumps typically utilized for such process include peristaltic diaphragm pumps. So peristaltic pump, do you heard about peristaltic pump? Hello?
No, sir.
No,
Explain.
no. So a peristaltic pump is actually a pump that is used for pumping a fluid from one location to another without directly contacting the fluid. Okay. So usually, like any motor or motor devices, which will take them, for example, the water pump, it will take the motor will uh, uh, take the water inside and pump to some other location. But there will be mechanical contact with the pump and water. So in this case, you need to ensure that there is no direct contact with the fermenter medium, so that to ensure the sterility. Okay, and all the biological fluids when you are pumping into from one location to another, that biological fluids or reactor reaction medium, etc. What it needs to be ensured or transferred with the proper sterility. So for that, a peristaltic pump or a device like peristaltic pump is used, in which there will be a tubing, and through the tube the liquid needs to flow from one location to another. And for flowing of the liquid from one location to another, say in this case the tank and the exchanger, uh, there will be, needs to be a driving force. Okay, so usually it may be a pressure difference. Okay, a pressure, if you are if or a height difference, you know that from a higher location to lower location, automatically the fluids will flow through the tube. And if it is not, then you need to give additional driving force. Maybe say from a lower tank to higher tank, you can give additional pressure into the lower tank so that the fluid will rise to the higher tank. So that's another type of driving force. So usually the peristaltic pump ensures an additional driving force for the fluid, or a momentum for the fluid from to move from one direction to another. It is like three pins. Okay, uh, three rotating pins will be there for a peristaltic pump, or three rotating rods. Two of them will say work in one direction and another one will work on another direction. So the pipe, actually it is the flowing pipe, or the tubing that is carrying the fluid will pass through these pipes. So during this, and the fluid which will be present in which will present in these say tube will be driven to one side using these rotating pin, or the rotating rod, and the rotation of the rod will drive the fluid into to one side. So in which direction the pin is rotating, to that direction the fluid will be pushed. So the only thing is that there will be rotating pins, and through those rotating pins you have to place the say your fluid containing tube. Say in this case, this is a tube that is carrying the medium to the heat exchanger. So this is a rotating pin. Okay, and the rotating pin ensures that the fluid is actually forced or pushed to the other direction. Whatever the concentration or the pressure that is present on the other side, the driving force, just like a motor that is rotating or the wheel that is rotating, the rotating wheel will or the rotating pin or the rod will rotate in one direction, and that will just like you may sometimes, at least you should have squeezed the uh, say toothpaste tube, right? If you are just rotating a pencil over the toothpaste tube, what happens? Okay, you starting from one end of the tube, you can rotate a pencil over the tube. So in the direction of rotation of that pencil, the remaining content of the tube will be accumulated. Okay, something like that. The rotating direction, the content of the tube within will be driven to the other direction by the rotating pin. And a simple example is that of the toothpaste tube. You can place say a pencil over, or pencil or a pen or something cylindrical over that toothpaste tube, and you have to try to rotate in on both directions. So in whichever direction you are rotating, and the content of the tube will be transferred to the other direction. So that's how the peristaltic pump will work. So the fluid which is present within the medium will continuously be driven to the other side by this rotating movement of the role, and that is a peristaltic pump. And that pump is actually present externally. There is no direct contact with the medium which is present in the tube and the rotating pin. So that ensures the sterile transfer of that contents from the tank to the heat exchanger. Okay, is it clear? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay. However, in some cases, that is the production of a single cell protein, etc., from highly reduced substrates such as alkanes, where the metabolic heat is impossible to cope with utilizing internal heat exchangers or, say, jackets, then these type of external heat exchangers is required. Normally, it is not adopted because of the contamination risk, but at least in case of some cases where extra high heat generation is expected, like single cell protein production, then you need to use such type of external heat exchangers. The rate of heat transfer to the heat exchanger, you can mark it as Q heat exchanger, HXCR. That is the rate of heat transfer. Okay, the rate of heat transfer to the heat exchanger. It is described by the following equation: Q HXCR, that is U A delta T, where U is the overall heat transfer coefficient, A is the area available for the heat transfer, and delta T is the driving force. That is the difference between the temperature of the broth and the heat exchanger. Okay, so the overall heat transfer efficiency can be calculated using this formula. Providing the broth and the coolant are well mixed, the U can be calculated on the basis of the prevailing resistances to heat transfer in the system. So here you can calculate the value of U, that is the overall heat transfer coefficient, based on this prevailing resistance of the heat transfer in the system. Here there are various components that needs to be considered, like at least there are 5 different factors that is affecting the overall heat exchange. The first one is the process side broth interface. So the process side means within the vessel, that is uh, within the reactor vessel itself, where the actual biological process is occurring. So in the medium, that is the properties of the medium is the broth side heat transfer component. Whereas another one is there process side fouling side. That fouling side means within the reactor vessel, over the walls of the reactor vessel, there will be some film formation and other things. Okay, so that microbial biofilms that may be expected to develop over the inside or in the inside walls of that reactor vessel will affect the heat exchange process. So the properties of the medium, that is the broth side interface, and the medium and the reactor vessel is in contact, and during the growth and fermentation processes, there will be microbial accumulation and fouling film formation over the wall, and that fouling film which is present over the inside of the wall will have a role in the heat exchange. And another one, the wall itself, the vessel wall itself, through the heat exchange is or the heat is transferred to the concerned external cooling system. And another one, there is a fouling on the other side, that is the coolant that is flowing through the jacket or the coils, etc. That will also create some biofilm and some other dust particles, etc., which is settled on the other side, and that will also contribute to the heat exchange efficiency. Then the other one is the service side boundary layer, and the overall exterior wall of the will also dissipate heat. Okay, and it is not only means all the heat is actually, it is not only transferred to the medium, but or from the medium to the coolant, but the service side means the external walls or to the exterior side of the reactor, and that also is having some role in overall determination of the heat exchange capacity. So there are various factors, okay, just like that of the heat exchange in case of that bubble which is present in the medium, which is discussed in one of the heat and mass transfer sessions in the previous class, where various factors or at various stages the heat transfer needs to be considered. Here we have at least the broth phase, the fouling on the broth side, then coil wall and the walls of the container or the reactor vessel, then the fouling on the external wall, side of the container, then the overall service side boundary, which means the even outside the cooling jacket, the external wall of the overall bioreactor, where the heat is actually dissipated to the external environment. So there are various factors or various stages that needs to be addressed. So that is represented as say 1 by u equal to, that formula is actually given here, given there, and here the inverse of hi represents the first one, that is a broth side interface. So the contribution of the heat transfer by the broth, the properties of the broth, and this is the fouling of the broth side. This is the vessel wall, properties of the vessel wall, or what thickness it is made of and what is the material that is made of, etc. will be accounted here. And here this is the service side fouling, or the external surface of the coolant, or external surface of the wall, surface of the say what is called the fermenter vessel, and the area that is coming in contact with the coolant. So the properties of that fouling film, which is formed on the external surface, is actually contributed here. And this is the external boundary wall, where the vessel is actually coming in contact with the air, external air, or the external surface. So these are the different parameters that needs to be addressed while calculating this overall heat transfer efficiency. So E is the wall thickness and K is the thermal conductivity. This is actually, it cannot be, you cannot control these two. E and K are actually a constant because it is a property of the vessel wall or the material, the thermal conductivity of the material. It is decided by the manufacturer. And even the wall thickness, that you cannot manipulate because that is a fixed value. For every reactor or every vessel used in the reactor, there will be a specific E and K values. The thermal conductivity is not changing for the material that is used, and the E or the wall thickness is also fixed for a particular vessel. So that is actually decided by the manufacturer, and that value will not be changing throughout the process. So therefore, the overall heat transfer coefficient is not only dependent on the heat exchanger configuration and the choice of the coolant. It also depends on fermentation fluid and fouling potential and even the degree of mixing. So various parameters were involved in determining the overall heat transfer efficiency. That is a heat exchanger configuration, then choice of the coolant, then the fermentation fluid or the properties of the fermentation fluid, the fouling potential on inside and outside of the walls, and even the degree of mixing that is provided. All these things will contribute to the overall heat transfer efficiency. Then correlation for this H0, that is the external wall, are typically available for and provided by the system vendor, because as you know, the values like E and K or the wall thickness and thermal conductivity is decided by the system designer or the vendor or the manufacturer of the vessel, and even the H0 value is also static and is constant for because that's a property of the wall, external wall of the vessel, and that's also decided by the vendor. Generally, the vessel wall provides least resistance to heat transfer. Generally, contribution to resistance can be ignored unless vessel is fabricated from stainless steel with a wall thickness of greater than 5 mm. Beyond this point, it becomes significant. So, if the wall thickness of the vessel thickness is not greater than, if it is not greater than 5 mm, then that is not significant. But if your vessel thickness or the wall thickness is more than 5 mm, then that becomes significant because it will contribute, it may affect the overall heat transfer efficiency. So this is some general concepts. Now, the film heat transfer coefficient or H1 depends on several parameters. So the first one is say this is the H1. So this is the property of the medium as I mentioned. And that depends on several parameters including fluid physical properties, That's the medium, the fermentation medium, physical properties of the or the density, viscosity, specific heat capacity, thermal conductivity, etc. of the medium fermentation broth. That is accounted there. And agitation conditions and the vessel geometry, etc., including the impeller type, etc., which is also present within the vessel. That all contributes to the overall value of the H1 or HI, sorry, H internal. Okay. Now, we would like to assume that this resistance is uniform over the entire surface of the tank. However, it has been demonstrated that local heat transfer coefficients are higher in the plane of the impeller than they are above or below the impeller. So, which means there are, as I mentioned, there will be localized differences in the heat transfer efficiency. Say in a fermenter, maybe there is only one impeller at the bottom, or there are two or three impellers at say at the bottom, then on the middle and the top. So at different there may be different layers of impellers, rotating impellers will be there. So if there is only one impeller and at the plane of the impeller there will be better mixing, whereas on the top and bottom portions where there is no impeller, then at that portion there will be somewhat static effect will be there. Proper mixing will not be there, and that means the heat transfer efficiency will be poor in that region. So if you have more impellers and then that may ensure a better mixing of a tank with more height, or a longer tank needs to be inserted with more impellers. Otherwise, proper mixing will occur only on the plane of the impeller, and on the other side, just like that, you can imagine if the impeller is present on the center portion of the tube or a column, then only at that plane of the rotation of the impeller there is a proper mixing, and on bottom there will be almost a static liquid will be there, or medium will be there. Okay, and that type of design or fermenter design may affect the overall heat transfer efficiency. So that's another aspect. And this aside, there are several form correlations available for standard reactor configurations between operational variables and the film heat transfer coefficient. So, one of the values that is considered for determining the overall efficiency is a Nusselt number. This is a dimensionless number. Dimensionless number means it's actually a ratio. A ratio doesn't have a dimension. For example, usually whenever we are saying that it is a centimeters or some other value will be there, or some unit will be assigned to some numbers, when you are measuring something. But a dimensionless number means it's simply a ratio, and ratio doesn't have any dimensions. Dimension means either length, breadth, time, etc. These are all different dimensions, and that type of dimensions will not be there for a Nusselt number because it is a ratio. And here you have, you can see that this is a Nusselt number is HI dt divided by K, where HI is the process side heat transfer coefficient, which is discussed. That's a property of the medium and interior components of the reactor. And the broth thermal conductivity, that is K, and the tank diameter dt. So if you consider all these things, you can calculate the Nusselt number, which is a ratio. So it is a dimensionless number. In fluid dynamics, this Nusselt number is the ratio of the convective to conductive heat transfer. So you know that in reactors there are conductive and convective heat transfers are there. So this is the ratio of the convective transfer to conductive heat transfer at the boundary in a fluid. So at the boundary wall, the convective heat transfer is occurring in the broth medium. Conductive heat transfer is occurring in the vessel walls. So there is a ratio of heat transfer between the convective and conductive heat transfers, and that is known as a Nusselt number. As Nusselt number of value 1 represent heat transfer by pure conduction. If the heat transfer is only through conduction and not through convection, then there is a single value or Nusselt number 1. A value between 1 and 10 is characteristic of a very slow slug flow or a laminar flow process, and a larger number, Nusselt number, corresponds to more active convection. So if the value is more, the Nusselt number is higher, then that means there is a more active convection. The turbulent flow typically that is a 100 to 1000 value. That much higher number of Nusselt number will be there if the medium is highly mixed and there is a very turbulent flow in the inside of the chamber. Then Nusselt number will be high because there is a convective transfer will be much higher. So which ensures a higher value for a Nusselt number. And if it is almost static and there is no convective transfer, then that means most of the heat transfer is occurring only through conductive process, and in that case we have the value of a 1. Then Nusselt number is named after Wilhelm Nusselt, who made the significant contributions to the science of a convective heat transfer. So this is a both conductive and convective heat transfers were occurring in bioreactors, and this value Nusselt number is an indicator of the ratio of the convective and conductive processes that is occurring, and higher value of the convective transfer means there's a turbulent flow and turbulent mixing of the medium, and if it is not there, almost medium is static, and main component of the heat transfer is through conduction through the vessel walls to the exterior. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any questions? No.